Alright, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and the question is, CPI up or down? Of course this is a manufactured number, the CPI, but the result comes out tomorrow. They're going to tell us whether or not CPI for this month or for the month of June is above that for the month of May. And so the question is it going to be higher? If it's higher, this is going to put enormous pressure on markets. It's basically a signal that the Fed has achieved nothing. And if it's lower, I expect risk to come on very, very quickly and very strongly. There's a mixed bag of opinions. The coming week, CPI on Wednesday is expected to run hot. This is generally the consensus, that we're going to see a number above the last one. And you can see that they have the FOMC and then CPI slap down. Is that what we're going to witness? CPI slap down into the next FOMC meeting. We've got a slight difference here on the S&P volume momentum, but ultimately it doesn't really tell us much. The mainstream media, so CNBC, is telling us that the headline inflation number, including food and energy, which is a lie, is expected to rise by 8.8% from May's level of 8.6%, according to the estimates from Dow Jones. So mainstream media is telling us to be prepared for that. Some people online are telling us to be prepared for that. And then on the flip side of this is the commodity index tracking fund. And you can see by the recent drawdown that this is actually telling a different story. This is hinting that we may have already seen peak inflation. And we know this is coming at a time where typically peak inflation is seen between 22 and 25 months out. And we are right around 24.5 months at the time of recording. At the same time, this is oil. And oil is telling us, this is Brent crude, as you can see, the same thing as the commodity index, that potentially we may have seen peak CPI. So we've got a little bit of mixed reviews. And at the same time, the Happy Hawaiian has said, I'm overdue on updating for the Fed pivot indicator. And frankly, it's showing we've arrived already. And if you've been watching the channel for a while, you know I was thinking that we'd see it in September. That's always been my thesis. Of late, I've been talking about how Raoul Paul said that he thinks we may have already seen the last rate hike in June, and I wasn't too sure about that. But then I stumbled into this indicator here, and it shows that we're there already. So you can see every time we reach the top of this channel, they end the hiking cycle. Hiking cycle ends, hiking cycle ends. As you can see, every time we touch it, including in 2019, and then rate hikes start again, and here we are again. So it doesn't mean that they have to just immediately reverse course and that's what we'll see. Of course, you can see here that this indicator ground up a little bit for a period of months before it dropped down. But this already looks to be curling. It at least leads me to think that we may have seen peak inflation, and that perhaps, although we're being told to expect a guaranteed increase from May's level, maybe it's just not as bad as it seems. And I've also been covering on the channel that we may be about to shift from an inflation narrative to a lack of growth narrative. So something to keep an eye out. Tomorrow's CPI number will reveal all that we need to know. But I thought this indicator was very, very interesting. As they gear up for a 75 basis point hike in a couple of weeks, they would be knowingly blowing up the system. So just to make my point absolutely clear, my point and my opinion here, I absolutely believe that they are going to deliberately blow up the system, but I've been working under the assumption that there's one more high left in this yet. So just to make my point of view clear for anyone watching, I think that we're going to get a pivot around September. That's what I've been touting for weeks now, and I think that that leads to a drop in this indicator. I think that we see printing come back on. Not all at once. I think first we see a pause, then we see a reverse, then we see a lot of money printing. But I think that's what ultimately drives one last blow off top move in Bitcoin, in stocks, in property. And then I believe that we get to this point where they deliberately just blow the system up by hiking into a slowing economy. By then the economy, it's already slowing. It's already guaranteed to be not growing, doing well, not prospering. But I believe there's one more blow off top in this that comes after a pause, which is coming in the next couple of months. They blow it off, and that buys them just enough time to get ready for the CBDCs, which I believe will start to be truly rolled out in 2024 and 2025. So that's my opinion, just to make that clear. However, it's worth noting that if we continue to just see them hike rates into a slowing economy and the CPI number just keeps going up and they just clearly signal that they do not care about saving the economy, then my fear is that we may be way closer to this reset than I thought. We may well be a couple of years ahead of where I thought we were. So make sure you have some level of contingency plan. I've been saying this for a long time. Food, shelter, community, medicines if you need them for you or your family. Don't be irresponsible in stockpiling, but also make sure you've got yourself taken care of, because in the worst case scenario, we're definitely going to see a lot of inflation. So make sure you've got all that money outside the system. Don't trust, verify. Own your own keys, take your crypto off exchanges, all of that good stuff. And so with all that said, this also comes right around a point when the Bitcoin cycle low on day 60. We're on day 61 now, and this is starting to get deep enough that you might call this a candidate for a cycle low. So any swing low out of here or the next day is a long from me. With all that said, the number of Bitcoin addresses ever created has hit 1 billion. 1 billion. Now it's important to point out that that's not 1 billion users on the network, because you can generate a new Bitcoin address every time you send or receive Bitcoin, and actually that's kind of recommended so that you can maintain some level of privacy in your transactions. But this is a milestone nonetheless. 1 billion addresses, right? JP Morgan lost 3 executives to crypto firms last week. So that tells you this space isn't going anywhere. When the people from the banks are leaving the banks to go and work at crypto firms, that tells you this thing in this industry is here to stay. So as I've been saying in the first half of this video, I fear they may be a lot closer to this reset than I'd originally thought. The CPI data will reveal all, but you can't deny at the same time. I did a video the other day on Sri Lanka blowing up. There's civil unrest in all of these places. Netherlands, Italy, Lebanon, Egypt, Albania, all the way down to China, Panama, Ecuador. And we've got Chinese banks having frozen customer accounts, lead it into civil unrest. Remember, if you hold Bitcoin, especially on a cold wallet, then it can't be confiscated. We've also got Colombia right now. Inflation is soaring and the Colombian peso is at record lows against the dollar, and many of them are turning to Bitcoin. And again, it's easy to overlook this because our currencies over here in the UK and in America are relatively stable, even though they're all dying and they're all being debased and devalued by the minute. Relative to some of these other smaller currencies like the Colombian peso, they're quite strong for now. But make no mistake, this is where we're going. And when it gets to hyperinflation, you can look this up for yourself in your own time. These nations, typically, especially in places like Venezuela, they go and pay for their groceries ahead of time. They pay first and then they run around and gather them all up, because often by the time they've gone shopping and filled their trolley up and gotten to the till to check it out, the number that they need is significantly more. That's how quickly currencies inflate and debase over there. So when you've got currency debasement at that level and at that rate, then Bitcoin actually becomes stable, priced in your own currency, right? So Bitcoin absolutely is an option, even though it's been drawing down 70-80% against the dollar or the pound. 5 years ago today, this illustrates the point of the long-term hold. This guy photobombed Janet Yellen with a buy Bitcoin sign from Capitol Hill, and back then, only 5 years ago, $2,364. So we're around 10x, a little bit under 10x from that price 5 years ago. Over in Texas, large Bitcoin miners have shut down as the heat wave strains the grid. So I assume, pretty sure, that as the heat wave takes over, lots of people have to crank up the air conditioning to the max, and it puts more pressure on the grid. And I know what happens when there's too much pressure on the grid. Rather than black out, the miners will just dial back. So they'll shut down for a couple of days. We'll lose a few exahashes from the network, and then once the heat wave is passed, they will power back up again. It becomes very expensive to cool when you've got excess temperatures and stuff like that. And so Bitcoin adds demand responsive capacity to the grid. So when nobody's using the energy and it's sat there and liable for surges and waste and all of this sort of thing, you can use it effectively to mine Bitcoin, and then you're not actually causing environmental issues from that. Another spot Bitcoin ETN, this is an exchange traded note, will launch in Germany today. So the rest of the world is getting ahead on these spot Bitcoin exchange traded notes and ETFs, exchange traded funds. So there's still none in the USA though, but of course that's deliberate. Hong Kong is to introduce draft legislation to treat crypto exchanges like traditional finance. So again, this is going nowhere. Brazil, Rio de Janeiro wants to be the heart of Bitcoin and the crypto ecosystem of Brazil. So this is more adoption, of course, and 30 million users in Brazil can now pay bills with Bitcoin using this app called PicPay. So this is more adoption, this is more onboarding, this is more real world use. Switzerland's 5th largest retail bank will let customers buy Bitcoin by 2024, and even the Swiss post office is going to offer Bitcoin trading and custody by 2024. So isn't that incredible? Peter Schiff, Bitcoin's loudest basher, naysayer, has decided he'll accept Bitcoin in the sale of his bank if regulators will let him sell it. The irony of this is hilarious and painful to watch. I don't like to see people suffer, even if they are questionable in their ethics or morals. I don't wish any ill on anyone. But yeah, are you willing to sell the bank for Bitcoin? And he replies, yes, I would sell the bank for anything if regulators let me sell it. My main goal is protecting customers. Peter Schiff acknowledges Bitcoin has value and is willing to sell his bank for Bitcoin. I mean, we all kind of knew all along, right? He's bad mouthing it because he had a conflict of interest. He owns a bullion dealership and a vault, and he owns a bank. So he doesn't want to lose customers to Bitcoin who can be their own bank and store their own keys and take ownership of their own digital gold. So it kind of makes sense in this incident. So it's funny, but it's painful. I don't want to see him suffer. Ultimately, he probably won't suffer that much. It'll be his customers at the bank that will suffer, and I don't like to see that. But of course, if you want to hedge the risk, if you want to protect your wealth against this sort of thing, then just buy Bitcoin and hold it yourself. Hold the keys on a cold wallet. Take ownership of your own crypto, right? And so lastly, nothing much has changed in terms of the charts. We have to obviously, as I said a dozen times this video, wait for the CPI print tomorrow, and that will tell us the direction the market can go in. Remember, it's going to be a choppy session out there, so protect yourself, be careful with leverage, that sort of thing. Do expect a cycle low to form over the next couple of days. So my bias will be to look for any reversal in the next couple of days and buy that, and then true confirmation for full exposure will come of a trend line break here. Otherwise, we hold this short until further notice. I'm noticing oil is sub 100. So again, I've been saying this over and over and over again. This gives the Fed more credibility in saying, haha, we've tamed inflation. Maybe we can pause hikes. Maybe we can step back and be more accommodative. So I don't know. There's subtle tells all over the place, albeit very confusing and conflicting, many of them. Gold is bleeding out, but I believe this to be a capitulative final shakeout before we go. I've said again, if we start to trade sideways and range in here, then I can't tolerate that for very long at all. But if we can get some sort of, I don't know, one last push down and then a reverse tomorrow or the day after, I'll be more than happy to say that it should be able to recover this trend line in the not too distant future. Silver, of course, will follow, but take care out there because all these miners and stuff are going to get absolutely destroyed in the meantime. Bitcoin, I think I've already covered Bitcoin, but just in case anyone isn't clear, cycle low due any day now. Look to buy a swing low reversal, some sort of turnaround here, and then I think we can long this, and then hopefully we can break this trend line and long that as well. I would expect to see a 60-day cycle to the upside since we are so deeply oversold, but of course there's always the outside chance that the Fed is ready to blow everything up right now, so be careful out there. Ethereum, same sort of story. The yields are rejection at resistance, which is good. So this is telling us to be less open to inflation and more open to growth turn down. So and whilst we're at this, actually, I'll show you MATIC. MATIC, we have got a couple of things going on with MATIC for any traders around. I kind of like this. So it's pushing up, isn't it? It's deciding what it wants to do. First breakout here and repair, but we really do need to get above this to call this an uptrend. But I'll be watching this closely because there's definitely a long for MATIC that looks something like this, and potentially even higher beyond that. So especially if Bitcoin can catch a cycle low, especially if we can get a lower CPI print and things can start to turn around and risk can come back on, then I expect MATIC to fly. So I thought I'd show you that anyway. I hope you found value here today. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you could hit the like button, share this around, help me grow the channel. It's been growing really nicely lately, so I appreciate that. Thank you to all the people that comment and like. I do really appreciate that. Follow me on Twitter if you haven't already. If you've got any questions or any topics you want me to cover, throw those down in the comment section. And trade safe over this week. I'll be back tomorrow with a CP Lie update. So until then, look after yourself, look after your family, take care, all the best. Cheers, bye.